land use considers how the organization, the form, and the shape of your landscape was a response to how it was used. So here at Kapalua, on the back side of that main house, is a very informal open landscape that was used, as a play area for the kids. Over on the right-hand corner, you can see there was a tennis court. The upper picture is an orchard on the property. So you have these parallel rows of trees and linear walkways lined with low hedges or ground cover. Circulation addresses features related to movement, obviously. And typically in our residences, we have driveways for our vehicles and pedestrian ways. For the driveways, you want to think about not only the road itself, but how is it edged? Did it have a lawn edge? Did it have curbs? Were they raised curbs or just like coral blocks set in along the pavement? If it was, even if it was paved, probably initially you might find photos that it wasn't paved at all, like this street at Fort Kamehameha at Hickam. But then over time it was paved, curbs went in, sidewalks parallel to it, but those were all there from the very beginning, and they didn't change the pattern of those features or even the width of those features. You can also see how the vegetation grew over time. And then pedestrian circulation, oftentimes in our older properties, the sidewalks are really narrow, right? They're just 2 to 3 feet, if even that. As you can see at the Chun's residence at the upper right there. Sometimes you'll find really special pedestrian features like the stone steps in the bottom right. So when we have big roots that break up our sidewalks or our driveways, it's often necessary to make repairs. We have to do it for safety's sake. But when we do it, we want to make sure to try to use the same type of material when we're making the repair. Also, to keep the alignment, if it's curving in a certain direction, trying to keep that curve and not straighten it out, but reflect that historic alignment, and also width. And so, for example, your driveway, all the kids come home, you need parking for more cars, right? So historically, next to the driveway was all grass, lawn. If you need to accommodate more cars, consider using some type of a grass block product that allows you to keep that lawn look, that grassy look, but accommodates the wear and tear of the extra vehicles. So views, I really messed up my slides. So views, we're usually looking at those planned and designed views. Oftentimes, the house was located, oriented to take advantage of views, or features in the yard were set up to look towards the mountains, take advantage of breezes. But sometimes also, views can be intentionally blocked. So you've got an area that's a utility area. It's got, the garbage cans, or historically it had the clothesline, the drying yard. There may have been a hedge or something around it to block it from view from the rest of the yard. Or there could be vegetation hedges to create internal views. You kind of keep that focus internal rather than external if there weren't great views to look beyond and for privacy. And vegetation can be used to accent views, to create view corridors like you see on the right. Okay, so speaking of vegetation, it can be individual specimens like that huge monkey pod or banyan that you have on your yard, or it can be groups of plants, like the hedges shown here to define a driveway, or royal palms up your driveway, that pattern of royal palms on either side, or whatever that plant might be. So the vegetation, of course, being so dynamic and not static, it's going to change. From the historic times, naturally, some of it has died already, or it grows and it's too big for the site, or it gets diseased and it needs to be removed. The thing to keep in mind is, where was that located? Say a tree needs to come down. Can you replace it in the same location and try to replace it with a tree that achieves the same function? So if it was a palm along the driveway, you want to replace it with the similar species, the same species, to maintain that pattern and try to find one of similar height. Or if it was a big shade tree in the backyard, maybe it was an inappropriate shade tree. If it was a banyan, it was just too big, or African tulip tree, some invasive species. Look at replacing it with another shade tree, the kukui, or something else, a native plant that achieves the same function but is more appropriate for the landscape. Buildings, here we're not only talking about the house or the cottage in the back. Of course, we are talking about that, but also structures. Do you have a gazebo? Do you have rock walls or even concrete walls? Fences and gates, arbors. Those are all types of buildings that you want to evaluate over time. When were they incorporated into the landscape? Are they historic? And then the small scale features are those elements that provide detail and diversity, and they combine function with aesthetics. So they include things like lighting, this caged light, the clothesline poles. Not everybody wants to keep those, but they have a unique character, and maybe there's some adaptive use that you could use them for. Things like signage. Of course, this is on a military base, but oftentimes it could be a mailbox. Maybe there's some historic element of the mailbox holder that you want to retain. Other examples of small-scale features could be flagpoles, benches, small movable planters. And then finally, archaeological sites. Most of us don't have these beautiful heiau on our property like Sam and Mary Cook do in Manoa, but you may have some historic ruins. Maybe prehistoric, but certainly likely to have some historic ruins. So, for example, on the left, that is a coral planter ruin. It's out at Hospital Point, a Navy military neighborhood, that at one time, through looking at aerial photos of the neighborhood, we could see that there used to be like a cul-de-sac driveway around that, and that was, the coral planter in the middle of the cul-de-sac. So sometimes you may just have features on your property you have no idea what they are or how they came to be, and through the research you might find some pleasant surprises. So with that background on how to look at your landscape, maybe in a new light, Hunter's going to enlighten you on